promoting understanding of dialogue between Muslims and other Americans. I think when we conceived this panel about a year ago, none of us had really any idea of what the political landscape would be looking like today. But if anything, I think we all feel that the topic that we're going to be discussing today is even more urgent and important because it was here for us. We're very grateful to your participation today and really look forward to working with everybody who's here today as well as other interested people to try to cultivate a community of people who are interested in doing this work and advancing our mission of fostering understanding and promoting more humane polity in our country. Okay, so as we said in the opening description of the session, we all know that in the past few years there's been much heated rhetoric and increasing incidents that have brought about a lot of fear and hostility, misunderstanding between the Muslim community in America and other communities. So this session is really about exploring how the humanities, particularly the public humanities, can help address that problem and actually provide actionable ideas that public humanities practitioners and sympathizers can use in their own communities. So we want this to be very much a practitioner-oriented session. It's about taking away and sharing ideas that all of you can use back in your own states and your own communities. Okay, so the way we're going to do this today is to have a few introductions. Then our wonderful panelists will make about 8 to 10 minute presentations. Then we'll have maybe a few questions back and forth between the panelists, and then open it up to everybody for dialogue and questions. Okay, so let me begin with introductions here, and I'll be starting with David Washburn first. He will be the first up. David is a documentary filmmaker from Oakland. For over a decade, he's been making films that really provide a way of amplifying underrepresented voices, including Latino shipyard workers during World War II, Sikh communities in California's agricultural heartland, and most recently, Muslim American veterans. David holds an MFA in filmmaking from San Francisco State University. He's received grants from California Humanities, the Center for Cultural Innovation, and the U.S. Department of Education. And he's also a participant in the U.S. State Department's Film Diplomacy Program, American Film Showcase. So after David, we'll have Lainie, who's Project Director at the American Library Association's Public Programs Office, where she recently oversaw the implementation of the joint ALA-NEH Bridging Cultures Muslim Journeys project in public libraries all across the country. Lainie studied theater arts before embarking on her career in library services and programming. During her 15-year tenure at ALA, she's worked on many humanities-based library programs, including Let's Talk About It, Latino Americans, 500 Years of History, StoryCorps libraries, as well as STEM-related projects and library and community partnerships of all kinds. And then finally, our third speaker will be Zaki, Hamid, who's Program Director at Humanities Washington, where he oversees the Council's very innovative Think and Drink project, as well as its Speakers Bureau programs, which are held across the state in partnership with libraries, museums, schools, historical societies, senior centers, and all types of community-based organizations. An immigrant from Jordan, he received his bachelor's in theater from the University of Albany and a master in fine arts in acting from the University of Delaware. Zaki's been involved in community programming and organizing most of his professional career, and he also teaches classes on Middle East issues, film, mass media at community colleges and lifelong learning programs in Washington. Okay, so David, I'm going to hand it over to you, and begin short presentations followed by Q&A and dialogue.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. What my bio didn't really say is why I, the last almost 10 years, been involved in filmmaking projects, storytelling projects with Muslim American communities. And really it comes down to something deep in my heart, which those things are always difficult to articulate to people, but really I feel like since 9/11 and way even more now, we're in a real civil rights moment for Muslim Americans in this country. I see such strong parallels to what Japanese Americans went through during World War II. And so actually having done quite a few oral histories with Japanese Americans and hearing their stories, I always thought about what if I was living then, what would I have done? And so now I'm living now. And I wanted to use my filmmaking voice as a way to get involved in this conversation. So I'm not Muslim. Actually, my mother's Jewish. My dad's Episcopalian. And the synagogue I attended as a young boy in Sacramento was firebombed by white supremacists. I don't know if anybody remembers this in 1999. 5 years prior to that, a mosque was firebombed and destroyed in a town called Yuba City. It was the first mosque in the United States to be burnt down in this way. So I decided to make a documentary film about it, of an American mosque, which, again, I didn't want to use a subtle title. And it's shown on PBS around the country. And, but more importantly for me, the kind of community screenings and the public engagement side of things has been really meaningful. We can play a brief clip about it. It's a half-hour film that really tells the story of this group of Muslim farmers who live in Sacramento, right outside of Sacramento, the Sacramento Valley, who decided to rip up their peach orchard and put a mosque on their farm. And late one night, it was burned down. FBI investigated; they didn't find out who did it. But really, the film is not so much about investigations as it is the things that happened as a result of the fire. The Christians, the Mormons, the Sikh community members that reached out to them after the fire to express their solidarity. And so, of course, with my own personal background, I felt kind of like this is my own way of creating a gesture towards healing. And so I actually screened this film at the synagogue that was burned down in Sacramento, which is about 45 miles away. So we brought Muslim Americans from Yuba City to Sacramento, where both communities could engage in how they experience these hate crimes. The internet here has been quite strange, you know?
The American?
Yeah, or not. Okay, let's not do that because
people doesn't see the Muslim victim side story. They just see the Muslim as an aggressor. Here they are just a victim. There's a Muslim community building a mosque for them to pray to their God, and it burns to the ground. And these people are upset.
We were relying on our beliefs that it's God's house from the ground up, and He will protect it.
So I've taken this film to Islamic centers around the country, mostly in California, but elsewhere, interfaith groups, college campuses, to have screenings and then dialogue like this, where you bring together a diverse audience. Definitely a strong portion of them Muslim Americans, where people can watch the film and talk about what it meant to them in smaller groups. The smaller groups really worked. I didn't do that at first, but I loved it compared to traditional Q&As, where you could ask the same question over and over again. I screened the film in Yuba City, 4 times, and I think it's really important as a filmmaker to go back to the place in which you were kind of, they share your story with them, you have to go back and share it with the rest of the people in the community. So really this event wasn't really that well covered in the area, and now through the community screenings, we got press on the front page in that town many times. It was on PBS in this city probably a dozen times now in the last 4 years. It's punctured the public imagination in this city, and now people there understand what their Muslim American community members went through. This is a mosque in Washington, D.C. And this is, I've screened it at dozens of mosques, and it's one of the kind of lessons that I've taken from this is in how to engage and cross that divide of bringing in, let's say, Muslim Americans to your humanities programming or your film. For me, a lot of it was going to the community itself, because as we've seen in the kind of, I love interfaith gatherings, I do, and I will continue to love them, but often it is a lot of the same kind of community members coming to them. So I was like, how can we get people who don't traditionally watch documentaries, who don't engage in this kind of dialogue openly in public, how can I reach them? So I've gone to mosques like this, and so I would suggest for anybody wanting to engage in this kind of work, not all mosques, but many mosques will have a Friday night social event, and this is one of them. I've done them in like San Jose to a 100+ audience. So it's like, how can you get 100+ people somewhere really easily without spending a lot of money? Well, they're already doing it. You just have to go to them. So not all mosques do this, but quite a few do. And if you kind of really search around your community, you can find those that are finding ways to do social nights, and they really had nothing but really warm invitations to people like, we're hungry for this kind of programming. We want to get outside. We want to bring non-Muslims in to speak to us. I think it's been very healing in their own way to have Muslim Americans seeing a plain-looking white guy come up and say some really kind of empathic, healing things, and in that way, it's been its own healing process. Taken it to college campuses across the country, and this was just recently at UC Davis, where again we had a small dialogues afterwards. To transition now, at this event, there was a young teenager who broke down crying in this event because he was saying, "I'm just so fearful right now." This was back in April before things got really crazy. So obviously, the Muslim American community is, I can't speak for them, but for my friends, I mean, it's doubly difficult right now. I've been texting with people today because today's Veterans Day, and my next project that I'll introduce to you is has been in the works for 2 years, and is partly funded by the California Humanities. It's about Muslims who have served in the U.S. military. So today's Veterans Day, so it's appropriate. We'll watch something with veterans in it. But the response I've been getting from these friends and colleagues is a lot of people believe things. They believe in their faith and they believe things happen for a reason. As hard as that is to believe. So I got a text today saying faith is a mustard seed, meaning he sticks to his faith to believe that the seeds that grow now will spread flowers, beyond our own circles. So this project, Muslim Military Stories, it's a flexible title, but I thought about doing it 2 years ago after doing several short films with veterans. Again, like wanting to engage the post 9/11 conversation about Muslim American civil rights. I don't have anybody in my immediate circle who has served in these recent wars. How many of you guys have a family member who served in these recent wars? Okay, actually, so quite a few. I wanted to find a way to engage in the conversation of what if, this is profound, over a decade of war in 2 countries and so many people making sacrifices on both sides. What do people experience? So I did several short films with veterans as part of the storytelling project at San Francisco State. One of them was with a young Muslim American veteran. And I realized after doing this short film that there's something here. He's in a position right now as a veteran to use his experience to articulate the kind of contradiction in language that people are using of we're for freedom, we're all for freedom, it's free, 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 but then we want to take away civil rights of these people. And so the historical parallels to that, of course, are, you know, African Americans serving in World War I and World War II, dealing with horrible discrimination when they came home and not being respected for their service. Japanese Americans, of course, Asian Americans during Korea and Vietnam. So today I wanted to hear what Muslims who have served in the military have to say and how can they look back with respect on their service while simultaneously their country is disrespecting them in many ways. So I had this video, this 2-minute video, I'll stop after this, but I had this 2-minute video all queued up in June, and I was speaking with people like Huffington Post and AJ Plus, like I want to put this out there, I feel like this could really impact the conversation that's happening now. And then the DNC happened, the Khan story, just like got huge. And I kind of went into crisis mode. I was like, okay, we got to finish this, but we got to get this all the subtitling done this weekend. And I reached out to the Muslim Public Affairs Council and BuzzFeed, and we put this video online 3 days after the DNC, and it's gotten over like 600,000 views. So that was a real lesson in. I put it out on my own YouTube channel or through something smaller. I don't have a big user base. BuzzFeed has a user base of like 10,000 YouTube followers. The Muslim Public Affairs Council has a very dedicated group too. So it was a real example of how partnering with another group that has a big user base can amplify your message. And I know that's hard sometimes because those partnerships, like how do you exactly negotiate that and it's public private. For me, it's much more flexible. But we put this out and it got a great response. So why don't we watch it and then I'll sit down.
The Department of Defense is one family of many faiths.
As a Muslim who's defended our country as a veteran,
it's heartbreaking when some of your fellow citizens question your loyalty.
People seeing us as traitors and not believe that we could be loyal to the United States.
many who haven't served, who are in political positions, want to take away our rights as Americans just because we're Muslim.
Right now, there are thousands of Muslim American soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen serving and defending all of us.
Hi, I'm Staff Sergeant Aleem Shabazz.
This is Lieutenant Commander Mahmoud Ahmed.
Hello, I'm Specialist Sharif Rashid.
I'm Nancy Shacker from Kuwait.
Specialist Hussein from 182FA, Dragon Battalion.
Protecting our great country.
We will go die for other people that aren't Americans to support their rights of freedom.
But when I come home, political leaders, they talk about following people, tapping their phone calls, putting police in, Muslim majority neighborhoods. For me, that's crazy.
I'm a veteran, I serve for this country, and you're gonna tell me that my family can't come over from the Middle East to visit me? You're gonna ban them because they're Muslim? But didn't I fight for their right to be Muslim in this country?
I feel we've gone to a point as Americans that there's no returning, and we need to stop it, or else I think we've almost lost our soul.
I know what we're able to accomplish together in the military. If our own men, women, and our armed forces that are there fighting on a daily basis are able to look past the divide based on race and religion, why can't we, who are fighting every day of our lives, do the same thing?
Just in closing, I think one of the, I came from an anti-war family. I probably would have never joined the military myself. So in doing this, and I'm clear with that with the people that I meet, but in doing this in a way, the military civilian divide in this country is huge, and I'm learning that more and more as I do this. So it's almost a cross-cultural project. There's like 2 cross-cultural projects going on. So we have crossing cultures as top of people who have been in the kind of military experience, but also crossing cultures from being non-Muslim and talking to people who are Muslims. But one thing that I think is really, I'm excited about this project. What I'm doing with this is a number of short films for social media distribution, because I've seen, obviously, the audience is huge. And also a feature film down the line, kind of running in parallel. story, I think, really showed these Americans can speak to other Americans, and this gets back to our kind of the opening question here, of people who have a deep respect for military culture, for military experience, and you can, whatever you have to say about that, like, you can say, it's not fair, everybody's voice should count, whether they serve in the military or they don't, and that's really fair. But the fact of the matter is that there's a deep reverence for some in this country who they have a deep reverence for those who serve the military. Many of those same people are having a difficult time accepting the kind of pluralistic, multicultural society that we want to advance, and Muslim Americans are part of that. So what I feel is really interesting about this is these people, these veterans are in a space where they can speak to those people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily want to listen to their story. And I think the Khan story really illustrated that, where the contradiction is really stripped and really laid bare for all of us to see. So I look forward to sharing more. That's what I've been doing this last 10 years or so.
Hello, I'm Lainie with ALA. Can I ask you how many of you participated and your councils participate in the NEH initiative? You can't hear me, I'm sorry. How many of you participated in the Bridging Cultures initiative that NEH offered? Anyone here participated directly? Okay, so not as many as I thought there might be in this room. Just a word about, oops, do I do that?
Press escape in the middle. Never makes sense.
No, I'm not a math person.
Okay.
Not a science.
All right. Thank you guys. Bear with her. You got other Texas show. Okay. You do it just this way. Just press this. That. Okay. So just go to disadvantage.
Thank you. Okay. So just a couple words about the Public Programs Office and what we do. We exist to promote cultural and community programming for libraries of all types all across the country. We work with public, academic, school, prison, military-based libraries, all of those, to help them implement programs for public audiences. And we do that by offering professional development activities for librarians. We offer programming resources and model programs, and then we also do some re-granting to libraries. I worked with the NEH on the Muslim Journeys project during 2012 to 2014. It was part of their overarching Bridging Cultures initiative that came from the chairman's office, and ALA participated as a partner in the effort. There were really two main pieces of that initiative. One was called the Muslim Journeys bookshelf, and that was 25 books, a very carefully curated collection that was sort of organized under 5 themes relevant to Islamic culture and history, as well as 3 films that came with public performance rights that could be screened and serve as the part of a program for libraries. We gave that to roughly 1,000 libraries across the country, primarily public and academic, but also community college libraries. And then the second effort was really more of a drill down, deeper programming focus, which is called Let's Talk About It, Muslim Journeys. We made 125 grants for that project. We had 13 state humanities councils that took on the program, really just re-granting and running it through their state, through libraries and other organizations, and the rest of the grantees were libraries. The program had 2 stated goals that were developed by the NEH. The first one was to increase Americans' understanding of the cultural heritage associated with Islamic civilizations around the world, and to provide public libraries with this very carefully curated collection of materials that would help introduce Muslim cultures, Muslim history to public audiences. And the other part of the goal was to use these resources and public programs that would interpret them to foster an appreciation among the American public of traditions and cultures within the Muslim world. I'm going to skip over some of this just in the interest of time. It was, we went to all 50 states, District of Columbia, Virgin Islands, served about 400,000 people through the project. We had the effort evaluated by a third party. They're called New Knowledge Organization. And they reviewed the final reports that came in from libraries. They also did some focus groups, and they did some field work with some of the libraries that were doing our multi-part series, reading and discussion, and they found these 7 outcomes that I can go over quickly. The project was successful in that it did bring these new ideas and cultures to the public, and the people who attended the programs did have meaningful and satisfying experiences that exposed them to new ideas and new cultures. The project successfully, probably by virtue of the guidelines, did foster important new partnerships between libraries and all sorts of other organizations in their communities. Certainly student groups, interfaith groups, religious organizations brought those together with libraries in some partnerships that we still see are sustained even now and continuing to go forward. The third outcome, which to me was probably the most valuable, we found that it supported adult learners in forming core learning groups in their communities. Our evaluators deemed these groups of people as agents of cultural change. What we found was that the people who participated in these 5-part reading and discussion sessions were really motivated by a desire to be there, to understand something that they didn't understand, in order to position themselves to be informed and to be allies in what they perceived as Islamophobia. So we know that they did this and that they took this work to heart, but we also found in looking at the demographics of the people that came to these programs, the reading and discussion versus all the many diverse programs that came under the bookshelf, that we reached older, white, female audiences primarily through this project, which was, of course, disappointing to find out that it was so dramatically skewed that way, but that's what we found. Then it strengthened academic communities by helping them work more closely with their libraries, something that's important to my organization. We expanded library collections. We found that many librarians wanted to enrich their collections in this content area, but they didn't feel that they had the expertise, the tools, and it filled that need. These collections continue to circulate today, which is important. The project attracted new library users just by virtue of showcasing programs that were about and focusing some of their marketing on traditionally underserved audiences. And then importantly for us, certainly it advocated more for libraries as community commons, supporting their role to serve as a central and safe space for unfamiliar topics and sensitive conversations to be explored. I'm going to quickly talk about some of the challenges. I think it's very important to say this was a successful, big initiative. It met its goals. It did have challenges. So we found there were some local libraries that had considerable difficulty with the project. I'm sure there were other examples we didn't hear of, but these were the main ones. The Steer Public Library in Morenci, Michigan, they had staff that resigned just because they took on the project. There was a lot of local controversy. They had a local Navy veteran who attempted to organize a protest about the programs that they were doing. Speaking to David's comments, it was actually diffused because the 2 scholars that were co-leading the reading and discussion programs were themselves military veterans from 2 different generations. One veteran who served in Vietnam and one in Iraq. And that was able to really diffuse a lot of the anger and cut off some of the protests before they really happened. The Smithville Public Library in Texas, their staff was personally threatened. They were called in their homes. They were threatened by the local religious leaders, local politicians. They had a very difficult experience. I think it's important to say that the library staff that worked on this felt that they would do it again. They were very proud of the work that they did and the impact that they had in their communities. They were recognized with a national award from ALA, which is called the Gordon M. Conable Award for commitment to intellectual freedom and the Library Bill of Rights. And then the Orland Park Public Library had an open public program where they had hecklers and protesters. They were sort of loosely affiliated with a group called Act for America. It was covered in the Chicago Tribune. The Orland Park Library has had other similar controversies. But across the project, 1,000 sites, we only had 3 libraries that returned these collections because of controversy. Then I won't get into this very much. You can look these up if you're curious. These were the two main national challenges that came in while we were doing this work. One from World Magazine, which is a bi-weekly evangelical Christian news publication. They published a series of articles that attempted to offer alternate reading lists. They viewed this project as being pro-Islam, and they came up with some reading lists that they felt looked more appropriately at jihad and some other concerns. And then another complaint that was started by Senator Jeff Sessions started locally with libraries in Alabama, and then escalated, was covered in the Chronicle of Philanthropy. So something to look up here if you're interested. I think the key takeaways were, first, that libraries really needed advanced preparation to do this work. We fell down, I would say, ALA as an organization, in not preparing that kind of training and support at the time that we offered these applications, because we fell short of our goal in terms of getting a full 1,000 libraries to do this. And part of that, I think, was because they didn't feel prepared or comfortable to take on something that they knew would be controversial. It's an important lesson that we learned. They also needed practical moderation and public relations support to do this project, and they needed guidance on understanding and developing library policies that supported them in doing this kind of work. I have a handout at the back if you're interested that gets into this. It is a wonderful presentation. There's also a link to a full hour-long webinar that you can check out if you're interested. These are all practical how-to tips prepared by a librarian who has a long history of doing very controversial community programming out of Evanston in Illinois. We found that this sort of thing, just these tips, actionable things, were very important, and we provided that through training. And finally, the other takeaways were that librarians are very enthusiastic about taking on controversial programming. Many of them identify this as a major career highlight for them, and something that really helped them experience personal growth as well as see growth in their communities. And then also that they welcome the opportunity to be part of a national effort. ALA and NEH's involvement was important to them in terms of giving them the confidence to take this on in their communities and also helping to diffuse controversy. I think it's also important to say that so much of the complaints that came to the libraries, we know that they came, the angry members in the community, they came to the librarians who were predominantly non-Muslim people, and they were able to feel that anger, feel those complaints, and I think that that was an important thing to understand about the project. Again, these are in the webinar link there. These are just some, if you're interested, resources about library policy that support everything from development of collection materials that deal with religion, to use the public space, to get at issues that deal with religion. And I just point those out as items of interest. I think that concludes my presentation. It does. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I don't have a presentation. So I come from a Muslim background. I'm an immigrant to the States. I moved to the States in 1994. I grew up a Muslim. And even though my spiritual beliefs are not aligned with Islam right now, or really with any religion, but it is my background. And let me start with a quick story. Right after 9/11, a couple of days after that, I was in Delaware going to grad school. 2 days after that, I was just standing on we were on the second floor of my apartment, and me and my roommate were standing on the porch. And we had a Muslim family that lived in our building, and we saw a woman and her child. They usually play outside. She was playing with that kid outside. And for the first time, I saw that woman without her hijab. And I looked at my roommate and said, what do you think compels a devout Muslim woman to go outside in public without her hijab? Fear. That's the answer, it's fear. They were frightened. On Wednesday morning, after the election, of a man who has demonized Muslims for the past year, I've talked to friends and family that were equally as frightened. I've talked to women who said, I can't go outside today because I don't want to go out without my hijab, and I'm just going to stay home. I'm calling it sick. The fear right now, the campaign is trying to whitewash, so to speak, all that rhetoric away as if it never existed. But we can't forget that he talked about registering Muslims. And when we saw that clip about the veterans, I just kept thinking of Geezer Khan. And to let you know what the Muslim community might be feeling right now is not just fear, but abandonment. There are tens of millions of people who elected this man either despite or because of that rhetoric against Muslim Americans and all Muslims in the world. So I just wanted to kind of share that a little bit and to tell you that we are hurting, we are grieving, and we are afraid. To switch a little bit about some of the programs that we have been doing in our council for the past couple of years on Islam and what comes next. We have a speaker that is on our Speakers Bureau that has been traveling all around Washington State giving a presentation called Islam 101. It is as basic as it can get. He is non-Muslim, he is white, but he has lived for a long time in Oman, and he talks about Islam through that experience of living for such a large part of his life in Oman and establishing exchange programs between the University of Washington and Seattle and different Muslim countries. They talked about libraries. God bless libraries. They are the biggest defenders of the First Amendment. They are one of the most radical organizations that I know, and I love them wholeheartedly. Our speaker went to several libraries, and almost at each one of them, he has met resistance. The libraries have fielded not only angry calls and emails about not having that speaker there, saying that is against who we are as Americans. We don't want to have him there. Of course, it always goes on. And at almost every one, he gets what he calls hecklers. People who are trying to tell him, you are not representing true Islam, we need to talk about jihad, we need to talk about radicalism, what's your agenda, all of that stuff. Now this is coming from a white man who is not Muslim. Starting in January, we have 2 presentations about Islam, both by Muslims this time. One is from Turkey, wonderful man, one from Koma, and the other one, and this is the one that we'd be interested in seeing how it goes. She is a Muslim woman from Egypt, one of the most brilliant scholars that I have ever talked to. She has a PhD in Middle Eastern Studies from Harvard, and I love her deeply. But I am now really concerned about the reactions she's going to get. She is a Muslim, and she's a woman, going all across our state, giving this presentation this is not a Muslim Islam 101, this has to do more with politics, ISIS, so on and so forth. So we'll see what kind of reception she will get. But even though these programs have been met with some resistance, to the point where at a community college in a community just north of Seattle, when David Fenner went there, that's our current speaker, somebody raised an issue so much that it went all the way to the president, and the president finally agreed to have it on campus only if the police were present. It went on, and the police were there, and of course nothing happened. And this complaint came from an ESL teacher, by the way, so I know she has Muslim students in her classes. We've also done some other programs in Think and Drink programs. We have gone through these communities. We did one on Charlie Hebdo, and when that happened, and Islam, and we did another one called ISIS and the Fight for Islam. So even though there is a lot of resistance and negativity around there, some of these conversations have been some of the most heartening I have ever had in my life. We went to Eastern Washington to have the ISIS and the Fight for Islam program. And there was a woman that spoke up very early and said there's an elephant in the room and we have to address it, and she just tore into it, and Muhammad is a rapist, blah, blah, blah. And as the program went on, towards the end, there's a man who spoke up. He's a Muslim in her community. It turns out that she had never met somebody who was Muslim before, which now, every time I hear any of the rhetoric, my first question is, how many Muslims do you know? I do a lot of work on racial division. Somebody asks me something, I say, well, how many black folks do you know? How many Asians do you know? And so on and so forth. That question is very illuminating as soon as you ask it. And there was a wonderful moment there after he spoke about immigrating to the States and assimilating and all of that. I think I saw her smile for the first time. She came and thanked us afterwards, and we gave her some resources, some books to read, and all of that. So let me just end by saying that now more than ever, this is an important thing to talk about because it is a civil rights issue. And I don't want to also just say that everything about the religion is wonderful and peachy. There are a lot of problems out there. There are hateful groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda and so on and so forth out there that are extremists, and they are threatening life, our way of life as we know it. But the distinction has to be made between these groups and Muslim Americans and Muslims in general. The distinction has to be made. So I hope if you do pursue programs about anything to do with Islam, to keep all these challenges in mind. Always try to get a Muslim on your panel, but not only Muslims, because we need a coalition. And I really think that communities sometimes hear it better if there's a non-Muslim on board. That's just the reality that we live in. So a mix would be great. That would be kind of my advice. So thank you, and